This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. We're on the Huddle Sports Network again, as usual. Going to preview the Michigan Wolverines and the Michigan State Spartans football seasons for 2024 to 2025. We'll talk about some Tigers and the Lions finalizing their 53-man roster after beating the Steelers in their only preseason home game at Ford Field. So let's get to it. The Michigan Wolverines 2024, they're home against Fresno State, and they're home against Texas, and then Arkansas State, and then they're home against USC, their first Big Ten opponent, and the schedule goes on all Big Ten from there. So, Ed, Michigan's ranked number 9 because a lot of their star players have graduated. Everyone should know why. Every Michigan fan should know why. Some fans won't admit it, but it's the truth, right?
Yeah, there's multiple things. Players leaving for the NFL, players graduating in general, some players leaving for the transfer portal, and, of course, the big elephant in the room, Jim Harbaugh left as well. So now officially we're in the era of Sharon Moore. We're going to see how his style of smash will be implemented and how his style will be taught and be received by these players. Now, question marks are going to be aplenty when it comes to the Wolverines, especially at the quarterback spot. I'll get to that in a second. But first, let's talk about the fact that this team still has some returning talent that can keep them as a contender for all season long. Primarily, let's go with the offense. They're always reloading on that offensive line, whether it be coaching up or developing their prospects or getting enough talent from the portal, maintaining great consistency and cohesiveness within that offensive line. It starts and ends with the trenches when it comes to the Wolverines, and that's why their offense has been the effective machine that it has been now for the past 3 years and going. It also helps when you have returning talents such as Donovan Edwards, who now, after the past couple of years of being the shadow of under Blake Corum, he's going to get this chance now as the primary running back. And I would not be surprised if, provided that he stays healthy, provided that he keeps on his production, and provided that things doesn't falter for him throughout the course of the season, I could see him as a likely Heisman dark horse if all things work out for him. Because you saw the impact that he brought to the Ohio State game 2 years ago. You saw the impact that he brought to the national championship game. Edwards has that game-changing ability in more ways than one. We switch over to the defensive side of things. You feel much more confident and positive about the Wolverines' chances there, especially the fact that, yes, even though guys like Mike Sanders still are gone, you still have Will Johnson with your secondary, who's going to be seen by many as the best cornerback in America just at the start of the year, and also the fact that you still have a very lively front seven, primarily with your two nose tackles in the middle with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Mason Graham, you saw how dominant he was in the Rose Bowl, looking like a potential first round, if not, dare I say, top 10, top 5 draft pick for 2025. And Kenneth Grant, an absolute freak of nature of his own right. Him and Graham together on that defensive line will cause problems for a lot of teams this season. And that defense will be a major reason as to why the Wolverines will be in a lot of games. But it'll still come down to how their offense is going to connect and execute when it's necessary, especially the fact that you are replacing certain talents. You're replacing a Roman Wilson. You're replacing a Cornelius Johnson. You're replacing a J.J. McCarthy. Yes, you still have a Samaj Morgan. Yes, you still have a Colston Loveland. I already mentioned Donovan Edwards. But still, your quarterback is still the main core, the main piece that's going to keep this engine running on the offense. And what we've seen so far throughout the spring and throughout the summer, we've seen a quarterback battle that, as of this week, as of this very moment, is seemingly still undecided. While, Coach Sharon Moore has shown praise for the likes of Jaden Davis, who's likely going to, the highly touted freshman who's likely going to be a redshirt for this year. We also seen other players like Jack Tuttle and Jaden Denegal not really stand out, particularly Tuttle, who, in his defense, has had some lingering issues in his elbow due to the fact that he did tear his UCL last season. So at this point now, it comes down to two guys, and these two guys have been splitting first-team snaps as of late. It's the front runner, you would say, going back to last season since he was JJ's backup, and Alex Orji. And then we have, on the other hand, Davis Warren. With Orji, I won't say proven commodity because we won't know or what his passing game is capable of, but you know what he brings to the table in terms of athleticism. He's the bigger, the better, the faster, more natural athlete of the two. The Wolverine, I would say that the coaches have been looking to see what improvements that has been hoping to make in his passing game to hopefully help himself stand out more. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that we're on the eve of the season start and we still don't know for sure of how, who's going to be the QB1, who's going to get the first snap, who's going to get that start. So that may be a positive or a negative, depending on how you view it, on how things either tighten up the competition or if Orji wasn't able to separate himself from the crowd. Now, on the other hand, with Davis Warren, he's the more natural passer. He may not be as athletic, may not be as fast as, say, Orji, but he's got some mobility of his own. He can move around in the pocket if necessary, get out in open space to avoid pressure. He was a former walk-on, former four-star recruit, or I would say walk-on was a former four-star recruit. Became that walk-on status due in part to the fact that he's been battling cancer in the past. So with his story as inspiration as it already has been, to see him come to this point to where now, according to some reports that have been circulating online and on social media, he may very well get the start tomorrow night against Fresno. Now, just because he's going to be getting the opening snap does not necessarily mean he'll be playing the whole game. From what I've been reading and what the general consensus has been feeling is that both Warren and Orji will be splitting snaps with the first team. They'll be both getting chances, both be getting plays designed and called for them what to do. Again, probably still a feel-out process to see who's going to be your primary QB for the majority of the season going forward, but you still want to see what you have, what balances out, what works well with your offense, that sort of thing. So, again, it can be seen as a good thing or a negative that you don't have this still sorted out, but if Michigan is still finding ways to be as efficient as they can be and still win games, I doubt they're going to complain about that.
Right. So we're gonna see what happens.
We're
Either
going to
Alex
see what
Orji.
Yeah, we are going to see what happens. So, and not to mention the fact that, frankly, before we move on, we got to get the fact that their record prediction, so to speak, because they do have, they do have a much more tougher schedule this year as compared to last year.
Yeah,
First
much
and
tougher.
foremost, you already mentioned Texas and USC. Let's also not forget the fact that they have Washington as well. They also have Oregon.
Oh
And
yeah,
then,
the
of course,
rematch, the national championship game.
yeah, and then of course the end of the year tilt with Ohio State on November 30th. So between those 5 games I just mentioned, I'm going to call those your swing games as to how your overall record may go. For me, looking at how things are standing for Michigan, my ceiling for the Wolverines, 10, maybe 11 wins. 11 would be pushing it. But if you can somehow get through this schedule, let's say a 10-2 record, you don't necessarily have to win the Big Ten because Ohio State's projected to win the Big Ten anyway. So say, for example, Ohio State, they're undefeated. You're 10-1 going into the to November 30th game. More
in
than likely,
Columbus.
In Columbus, more than likely Ohio State, they're going to go to the Big Ten title game, and you're not. If you beat them, you go 10-2, and you likely have yourself a playoff spot ready for you as an at large bid. Because you mean to tell me that defending national champion Michigan team goes 10-2 with this schedule, likely beating Ohio State for a fourth straight year, and even if they don't win their division or not division, excuse me, even if they don't win their conference championship, you mean to tell me they're not going to get a top 12 spot? Especially right, like I mentioned before, a key word: expanded field. The 12 is now a field of 12. So
Exactly.
if Michigan has, I'll say, an okay record in these swing games, that will determine whether or not as to they'll be going back to the playoff for a fourth year in a row as to how things will go. So for me, I'm going to have my prediction at 10-2. They'll split some of these swing games, but they'll all come down to, as it always seems to be, how they'll do against Ohio State.
All right. So we'll
What's
predict.
yours?
Well, I'll predict 10-2. I'll just keep it neutral right there.
I'll
No
say,
blowout losses
I'll
whatsoever.
say this: 9-3 is possible. I mean, Texas is no pushover. You can argue that Texas should have been in that national title game against Michigan. Oregon's going to be tricky. USC might be tricky as well, and then of course Ohio State's going to be looking out for blood.
Right. Michigan. I was gonna add Michigan would have beaten either Texas or Washington in that national championship game last season anyway. Right.
I think Texas would have been a bit more trouble to deal with. I'll
Right.
admit
But
that.
still, Michigan could have won by at least a closer margin than they did against Washington.
Well, yeah, that defense carried the day, as we saw it being manifested throughout this season. It culminated in that national championship game.
Yeah, and to put the cherry on top, the Mikey Sanders still interception with a pass being overthrown intended for the wide receiver.
Well, the good thing is, like I said before, even though Sanders still's gone, you still got Will Johnson. So
Yeah.
while I'm not trying to look past Fresno, obviously, the game against Texas week 2 will be massive for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, and Will Johnson was an X factor in the Wolverines' receiving defensive core. Now he can lead that receiving defensive core this season on forward.
Yeah, so expect the All-American tabs have already been bestowed upon him for the preseason. We'll see how he's going to be able to live up to those expectations.
Yeah. And before we preview the Spartan season, they just barely held on by the hair of the chinny chin chin to beat the Florida Atlantic Owls 16-10. Childs he threw a touchdown pass and he threw an interception that almost looked like a pick six, but man, just turnovers galore by both teams, just mistakes everywhere by both teams, but especially Michigan State with its new head football coach Jonathan Smith. Just a lot of stuff to work on.
This was frankly not the prettiest way that you would want to usher in a new era with your new head coach Jonathan Smith, especially with him taking over from Mel Tucker and Harlan Barnett, with that whole craziness of that circus of a season last year. But now trying to establish himself, fresh slate, new era, new show in town, and to have an opening night like this where there's turnovers, there's penalties, there's bad, horrific QB play, there's nightmares in the red zone where Michigan State, I believe, had at least 3 if not 4 turnovers. 2 of those giveaways, I'm sure, and then of course one was the turnover on downs late in the game that kept Florida Atlantic in this. Who, by the way, just looking at them on surface, they're essentially an FCS team, a borderline FCS team of how they were running around and how they were executing things tonight. They've only had 1 victory in their 11, in their 11 or 12 games played against Big Ten opponents. That was back against Minnesota in 2007. And there was a reason why when you see, like I said, I must harp back on bad QB play, especially by Cam Fancher, because I'll get to Charles in a minute. But Fancher was just all over the place with being so wild and reckless with how he was moving around, sliding. The issue of his sliding led to a lot of debate and I would say some controversy with some of the calls that were being made. It did not help, but still, Michigan State. Um, I'll also say, well, that Michigan State, in that regard, though, in regards to penalties, while I do like the fact that this defense is aggressive, they're not being smart. They're being too emotional. They're not thinking straight. They're not showing proper discipline, especially when you consider the fact on that fourth down where, frankly, I thought the officiating, which was horrible all night, kind of bailed out the Spartans there when you consider the fact that apparently
Yeah.
Thatcher started to give himself up with that slide, but he was short on the first down, which negated the fact that there was a likely targeting, which, again, MSU probably had like 2 or 3 or 4 targeting plays that didn't get called. That was one of them. With the hit that was made by Jordan Turner on the play. Then, of course, Turner, just being the absolute smartest guy in the room, takes his helmet off and throws it, inciting an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Now, if those had stood, not only will he have been ejected from the game, but that was 30 yards and penalties alone that would have advanced the ball on a drive to where FAU could potentially take in the lead late in the game. So MSU has got a lot to clean up. I can be proud of the fact that, yeah, like I said, their defense is hungry. They're aggressive. You like to see that, but you don't like the fact that, well, we got
Their
5.
pass rush defense was hungry, just not the
Yeah.
receiving defensive core.
Well, their secondary still got a couple of interceptions, so you can't knock.
Yeah,
them
they
back.
did. They did. One of them was given right to them, but the other one was well covered.
Hey, listen, you take what the offense gives you. If the quarterback is literally throwing straight to you on a target, shame on you if you drop the pick. I'll say that. But that still doesn't negate the fact that you still had some bad aggressive tendencies. You showed lack of discipline on both sides of the ball. Aiden Childs, I'm sorry, I was seeing all this hype up for him throughout this past offseason, and he came out looking very flat, missing reads, missing open guys, not connecting with his receivers for the most part, just making bad decisions, holding on to the ball too long. Yes, he may show good downfield vision, but he's not showing good internal clock. He does have his athletic ability where he can get out of the pocket, get out of trouble. You saw how it led to him getting a touchdown for Michigan State tonight. But just long term, unless he takes care of those little issues, it's going to be a very long season for him and the Spartans, because I know he showcased the confidence of that now that clip is starting to make waves about, hey, take the over, because the over-under was set on 5.5 wins. Well, based on what I saw tonight, I'm not surprised. In fact, I'm almost wishing that the over-under was set at 4.5, because that was just putrid, ugly.
Ugh.
That was some of the worst football I've ever seen, especially in that first half. And it's like I said, if it wasn't for the fact that they were playing a borderline FCS team, they would have lost this game, likely by multiple scores.
Yeah.
So they've got a lot. The Michigan State Spartans have got a lot they got to fix up before Big Ten season arrives. Otherwise, they're going to be lucky to try to get the 5 wins, let alone 6.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, which leads to our Spartan football preview. I would predict like 3 or 4 wins at minimum.
I will give them 5 wins. They already got the one tonight. I think a couple of their swing games will vary as determined as to whether or not they can be 5-7, 6-6, or 7-5. But I can put them at the 5-win mark because their defense is going to keep them in a lot of games. I like the way that they seem to figure out, okay, until we figure out our stuff with the passing game, we can still be an effective running team. Like Lynch Adams, for example, the running back who had a big touchdown run of his own earlier tonight. He can be a focal option and weapon for this offense that can be effective and productive, even if the passing game still has to sort itself out.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I thought I might set the bar like at a low level, but But yeah, I have to agree with the because you pointed out their pass rushing defense could keep the Spartans in like all of those games, win or lose. I would say five. I would actually say 5 wins in reality. To be
They have
fair,
the potential to get the 6, depending
they
on
do.
how
They do.
depending on how they overachieve in certain games. I'll say that.
Yep, just got to earn it. The Tigers, they lose Javier Baez to hip and lumbar spine inflammation. That he's back on the injured list. He's hitting 184, hitting around a 500 with a 500 plus OPS, and he's got 2 years left in his contract.
Well,
So,
I can update you on that. In fact, a few days ago, it was reported that he underwent hip surgery, so his
yep,
season
his
is
is done.
done. Done. He is done for the year. He was having a little bit of a, I'll say, spark, but overall, just another flat, unimpressive season. Like you said, with the 2 years left remaining on his deal, you have to wonder how long, um, or how much are the Tigers going, or that the organization is going to tolerate with this ineffectiveness.
Yeah, yeah. Fans are clamoring him for the Tigers organization to buy him out, while the mainstream media locally, is teasing that Javier Baez will be ready for spring training in 2025. It all comes down to the owner, Chris Ilitch, like you pointed out last week. Let's keep that real, huh?
Exactly, because Scott Harris can only do so much. Like if he's actually not being given the full reins
And be all
by the
puppeteered
owner,
by Ilitch too.
right, by the owner, then that's a problem in more ways than one.
A big problem. They did get rid of. They did grow a set of balls in DFA Joey Wentz. They designated him for assignment in order to make room for returning Casey Mize from his injury. But yet Casey Mize gives up 4 earned runs on 6 hits in 6 innings pitched. He got a no decision because Jake Rogers bailed him out with an RBI double, scoring Zach McKinstry in the bottom of the ninth to tie it at 4, only to lose 7-4 in 10 innings because Shelby Miller, although he was pitching red hot until tonight, it just wasn't consistent. It just gave out, wasn't consistent enough, and then he gave up a 2-run home run, and then Tyler Holden gives up a solo home run. Yeah, it was a missed opportunity to win the
Yep,
game
and a definite missed
in the
opportunity
ninth.
because this is a critical series with a Boston team that, frankly, they're one of your remaining roadblocks between here and a potential wild card spot. Because let's not forget, leading up into this game and leading up to this series, the Tigers have been on a tear as of late. At one point, they had won 13 of their last 16 games. Taking series against the likes of the Mariners and the Yankees and the Angels. Granted, the White Sox were there, but they still, you play who you play on your schedule, and they handled their business. The fact, like I said, I mentioned the Mariners and the Yankees; those teams were division leaders at the time when they faced the Tigers, and they still handled their business. So you come into this series with Boston, by the way, after you lost a close one-score game against Anaheim the other day.
Or Los Angeles Angels now.
Right. They're still Anaheim to me. But anyway, not being able to get wins like this may prove to be the very difference between you officially missing out yet again. Because I'll say this, some will say the playoffs start in October. For our intents and purposes, and for what the Tigers are fighting for, the playoffs are happening right now. Let's just be honest. When you look at what the schedule is going to look like for them for the remainder of the season, very favorable. You're facing teams like the White Sox and the Orioles and the A's. There's also the fact that you have series like this against Boston. You'd have another series coming up against the Royals, which is another team that's in your way. If you do what you're supposed to do and win enough games to where, especially with those head-to-heads, it puts enough pressure on those other teams to where you're looking at yourself as a team that's going to be still in the hunt with the last few games left to go in the season. But if you're not winning these crucial games, if you're giving them away with blowing in the bullpen or not coming up clutch to the plate, you only have yourselves to blame, frankly.
Yes. And I want to touch a little bit more on Casey Mize before we move on to the Lions. He's just, that performance just proved to me that he's still not ready to become a starter in the major leagues. Because to me, Mize just keeps giving up runs. Just his injury excuse has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, we're past that point now.
Yeah, Tigers need to start. Tigers really need to have more quality starting pitching. But again, the question is, will they? Like we asked last week, Chris Illich and stuff.
Well, you could have had it with Flaherty. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I could have stood pat. You can't because you were lingering around the 500 mark.
Yeah, man. So a lot of people, like, I can still see why they made the move, but I don't blame fans for thinking, man, we really punted a chance to where we could have made some noise for this year. But you got to think long term. Still have that in the back of your mind of what you want, of how you want things to go long term for the team.
Yeah. And then the Lions beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-17. Yes, Hendon Hooker made a few mistakes. He suffered back-to-back sacks, threw an interception, but he still ran the ball really damn well. And that still proves to me that Hendon Hooker he earned that number 2 quarterback spot behind Jared Goff. While the Lions, as we go to their trending truth, they set their 53-man roster. They ousted Nate Sudfeld, but he's Nate Dudfeld anyway because he sucked. Period. Hendon Hooker was the better quarterback overall, and the media like Kyle Meinke from M Live, one of the Lions beat writers, was like trolling Hendon Hooker, just at the wrong time, just because he gave up allowed back-to-back sacks. He still ran the ball damn well, like I just mentioned, and he can still throw the ball. He can scramble. Every quarterback makes mistakes, even Jared Goff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna preview the Lions probably next week.
I'll say this when it comes to Hooker, and then Dan Campbell's been mentioning it. Yeah, there's been ups and downs, but he's showing the improvement. He's showing why and what he's doing. He's needing these reps for a reason. He needs these snaps for a reason, to get his feet up underneath them, shake off rust or whatever. Because remember the fact that this is his first playing time in the NFL ever, because he had been recovering from a torn ACL that he had suffered during his last year in college. So see him making this progression now is encouraging, because you still want to see what you have in a player like this. And frankly, you want to have a reliable backup QB, because God forbid if something were to happen to Jared Goff, you wouldn't want to be running around in complete panic, because you're thinking, okay, things aren't where we want to be right now, but we got a reliable guy. It's next man up. Let's go. So if you think that you have that guy in Hendon Hooker, great. Because like I said, the Nate Sudfeld experiment was just not working out. I thought they were going to keep Jake Fromm maybe to help keep an extra body in there, but they let him go too.
Wow. Yeah. I guess he didn't work out either.
Yeah.
All right.
A lot of notable cuts. Not a notable cuts from that trim down.
Yeah, they cut Donovan Peoples-Jones, but they added him back to their practice squad at least. So they're still narrowing down that final number 3 wide receiver spot behind Amon-Ra St. Brown and Craig Reynolds.
James Jameson Williams.
Jameson Williams, that's right. Yeah.
Craig Reynolds is in the running back room.
A running back, that's right. Yeah. So Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. That's right. Yeah. Of course there's him. Yeah, they're still looking for that number 3 wide receiver.
Well, considering the fact that they recently added Allen Robinson and Tim Patrick to the practice squad, shows you what they're still trying to fill in with that respect. So either one of those guys will be more than a capable guy that can fill in, and that's in that receiver 3 spot, be effective, proven, capable, and like I said, just if someone's going to try to double JMO or try to double Laporte or try to double Amon-Ra, you have to be there to know when the ball, when your number is going to be called. And I think having a veteran in there or a guy with experience or a guy that has efficient or proven efficiency, and whether it goes to Robinson or Patrick for his case, that's quite a bonus, I would say, a bonus beneficiary.
Yeah. So, what all did we learn in this episode?
I will say we learned that the Tigers are showing that they may be on the verge of arriving sooner than we expected, even though you can debate on whether or not they did the right thing by trading Jack Flaherty at the trade deadline. They're still at a position to where if they're able to execute the right way, they can make this last stretch of the season very much fun. Because it's already fun now, then they don't want the fun to end. We learned that the Lions are pretty much all set in terms of getting their roster trimmed down. There was notable cuts. We mentioned Sudfeld. We mentioned DPJ. I didn't get a chance to mention Tim Kennedy, Matthew Betts, Jake Fromm, Stephen Gilmore, Jamar Jefferson. But some of those players that I did mention, also Isaac Ukwu, another guy that I was rooting for, some of those players have been brought back to the practice squad. You see guys like Sione Vaki and Isaiah Williams stand out and earn their roster spots in a way that might have shown, hey, either the coaches were very impressed with what they got, or Brad Holmes knows how to pick out talent. You tell me. We also learned that, frankly, Michigan State has a lot to clean up and fix up if they want to try to get an over on 5.5 wins for this season. And we also learned that Michigan is either being coy or they're being stressed as to how this quarterback situation goes, because we still don't know who their starting QB is. We still don't know how things are going to work out with, I'll say, with plays being called and designed by splitting the time between QBs, like we saw in 2021, for example. But we learned that none of that will effectively be an issue as long as their defense is going to keep them in games and their running game is top notch as it has been now. So that's pretty much essentially what we learned for tonight.
Yep, and we'll see how well Sharon Moore, their head coach, on top of all that, can develop the entire team back to the top. It might take time.
All with this looming cloud, we must acknowledge the looming cloud of what the NCAA may or may not do with this whole Signgate situation, which, considering the fact that I just watched the documentary of it on Netflix the other night, I came away with my own thoughts. I thought it was as fair of a presentation as possible. It really didn't so much as paint him out to be some type of saint. It acknowledges the fact that, hey, yes, he did this operation. Yes, he was ahead of the curve, but also let's not forget that there's been also some shady stuff being implemented by other people and other teams and other factors that frankly aren't being talked about because everyone wants to make Michigan the bad guy. So exactly, leave that up to y'all on that one.
Yeah, and it's no wonder the university is coming up with this Michigan versus everybody moniker.
Yeah,
which we don't blame.
They've embraced that mentality full force, and trust me, they needed it to, because
guess what? Michigan beat everybody last year.
Exactly. That they gave them that fuel to do what they needed to do to power through the rest of that schedule, beat Penn State, beat Ohio State, beat Alabama in the Rose Bowl, and then finish off with a national championship.
Yep,
So,
adapt and overcome, and it's
right.
time to do that once again in a new chapter, a new slate of Michigan Wolverines football.
New era.
Yes, so that is what we've learned. That is all we've learned in this episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Huddle Sports Network. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Michigan_Truth, and like its Facebook page. Subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Like our videos and turn on all notifications on the bell icon. Watch each of our episodes in full to help improve our watch hours. Follow it and listen to it in audio form on Spreaker. Follow me on X, Instagram, and TikTok and YouTube at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Follow Ed Smith on X, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at EdSmith313. Business endorsements go to Athletico Physical Therapy on Woodward and Ferndale, the B4 Foundation, Cali Tickets, Creative Embroidery of Cadillac for designing the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on my long sleeve shirt, podcast logo on my long sleeve shirt, and t-shirt over behind me. Cuts by Melanie in Lake City. Thanks, Melanie, for my latest haircut. It's a Denise, created by Denise Nathy. G&H Family Stores, also associated with Simply Delightful, has the most edible fudges and sweets. Let's roll it with all sorts of locations in Michigan. Let's roll with it. Rolled ice cream and Cadillac. Like them on Facebook and follow them on TikTok at the Food Mafia LLC and on Instagram at the Food Mafia World Ice Cream. Their flavor of the week, s'mores, just like last year. The fall equinox is around the corner. The Misaki Golf Club in between Lake City and McBain, Northern Auto Lab in Lake City, Northern Star Event Rentals in Cadillac, 231-884-8195, and on Facebook. The Raven Social Restaurant on South Mitchell Street in downtown Cadillac, with stunning dishes and desserts made by the one and only Chef Steve Gorski. Samaritas, again, simply delightful. Union Barber in Birmingham and Ferndale. United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan, near Lansing. United Mobile Power Wash and Dry Ice Works in Southfield. And Wellbeing with Catherine Palms in Leland and Suns Bay and Traverse City. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is a presentation of the Huddle Sports Network. We'll talk again next week. Until then, for Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips signing off. But remember, we observe and detect the truth about Michigan sports because the truth is out there. Stay on the lookout. Play it safe. Ta-ta for now. Hit him with a hind.
Take care, everybody. Go Blue.